Y'all, we've made it to 45 subscribers. Each one of you is a part of this journey, and it's a thrill to have you along. It's pure joy to share my passion with you, and your support is the fuel that keeps me going. You're not just numbers, you're my community. From the bottom of my heart, thank you. Here's to many more moments together. Stay tuned, y'all. There's a certain kind of joy that can only be felt when a loved one returns from the brink of death. Imagine, if you will, a woman, her heart heavy with grief, her days painted in shades of gray since the passing of her beloved. A love story that was cut short, leaving her alone in a world that suddenly seemed too big, too empty. Then, one day, the unexpected happens. The door creaks open, and there he is, the man she had mourned, standing alive and well before her. It's an impossible sight, a miracle that defies reason, and yet, it is as real as the air she breathes. Her heart leaps at the sight of him, her eyes welling up with tears that blur her vision. It's a moment of pure, unadulterated joy, a joy that floods her being, washing away the sorrow that had become her constant companion. She laughs, she cries, she stumbles forward to touch him, to confirm that he isn't just a figment of her desperate imagination. His presence, his warmth, his familiar scent, they all tell her that this is no dream. It's him, her love, returned from a place she had feared was final. Her tears flow freely now, not of sorrow, but of relief. They are tears that speak of a loneliness ended, of a love rekindled, of a joy reborn. She holds him close, her heart pounding against his. It's a rhythm of life, a testament to their love that had survived even death. She looks into his eyes, her own reflecting the happiness that fills her. It's a happiness that is profound, that is overwhelming, that is all-encompassing. And yet, in the midst of this jubilation, there are things she fails to notice. The slight stiffness in his hug, the faint unfamiliarity in his eyes, the subtle changes that hint at a mystery yet to unfold. But for now, she is oblivious to these signs. For now, all she knows is the joy of having him back. In her joy, she embraced him, failing to notice the subtle changes. But as the dust of joy settled, she noticed he wasn't quite the same. There was a subtle, unnerving alteration in him, like a familiar melody being played in a different key. His laughter, once a bountiful river, now seemed more like a trickling brook. His eyes, once gateways to a vibrant soul, now echoed a strange emptiness. His voice, once a soothing lullaby, now carried an unfamiliar rhythm. He was the same man in the flesh, yet his essence seemed to have shifted. His personality was no longer the vibrant tapestry she remembered. Instead, it was as if someone had taken that tapestry and rearranged the threads. The patterns were still there, but the colors were all wrong. She found herself grappling with a whirlwind of confusion and a growing sense of unease. His little quirks, the ones she had found endearing, were replaced by new tendencies. He no longer hummed while making coffee in the morning, and he had developed a sudden liking for spicy food, something he had always detested. His sunny optimism seemed to have been replaced by a peculiar kind of melancholy. His manner of speech, too, had taken on a new cadence. The words were the same, but they were no longer imbued with the warmth and familiarity she was used to. His jokes didn't make her laugh anymore, and his stories didn't captivate her as they once had. His words felt like they were coming from a stranger, not the man she had loved and lost and miraculously found again. She started to question the reality of her situation, wrestling with the unsettling feeling that was gnawing at her heart. Was this a cruel joke by fate or a twisted miracle? Did she dare voice her fears, or would that shatter the fragile happiness they had found? She loved him, but this man was a stranger to her. The joy of reunion was slowly being eclipsed by a chilling realization. The man she loved had come back to life, but he had not returned as the man she knew. He was someone else now, a stranger wearing a familiar face. She couldn't shake off the feeling that something was wrong, terribly wrong. In the hushed whispers of the night, her mind would race back to the man she once knew. A man of laughter, of kindness and compassion. A man who wore the world lightly on his shoulders, who held her close when storms raged outside. A man of stories, of shared dreams, of shared heartbeats. How he used to look at her, his eyes alight with the warmth of 1,000 suns, his laugh echoing in the corners of her heart, his touch, a familiar solace in the chaos of the world. This man, this new version of him, was a stranger. His eyes, once filled with warmth, now held an icy aloofness. His laughter, once music to her ears, was replaced by a silence that echoed louder than words. His touch, once comforting, now felt distant, cold, and unfamiliar. She began to question everything: the way he moved, the way he spoke, his new habits that were as alien to her as he was now. Each day she found herself walking on eggshells, afraid of this man who wore her loved one's face. Her heart ached for answers. She was desperate to understand the transformation that had taken him from her, changed him into a man she hardly recognized. She yearned to understand what had happened, to make sense of the senseless. The fear, the frustration was eating at her, gnawing at her sanity. She felt herself crumbling under the weight of the unknown. The world around her seemed to spin out of control, her reality distorted, her life upended. She was stuck in a nightmare, a labyrinth of confusion, of fear, and of despair. She was caught in a storm of emotions, battling the waves of confusion and heartache. She was trapped in a jigsaw puzzle with pieces that didn't fit, a mystery she couldn't solve. The days turned into weeks, weeks into months. She was living in a fog of uncertainty, of dread, of silent screams and whispered prayers. Her heart was heavy, her spirit broken, her world turned upside down. She was living a mystery that she never asked for. The truth has a way of revealing itself, often when we least expect it. This was no different for our protagonist. A woman who was filled with joy at the sight of her beloved back from the void of death was now standing on the precipice of a chilling revelation. As the days rolled by, it was as if a veil had been lifted. The man she thought she knew, the man she had loved and mourned, was no longer the same. His eyes, once filled with warmth and affection, were now cold and distant. His laughter, once the soundtrack of her joy, was now a hollow echo, a grim reminder of what was lost. She found herself grappling with the reality of his transformation. Every moment of delight at his return was now tainted with the sting of deceit. Was it a dream, a cruel trick of fate, or was it something more sinister? Her search for answers led her down a path she never imagined she'd tread. She discovered the unthinkable. The man she loved hadn't come back from death. He was replaced by a ghost of who he once was, a specter, living in the shell of her loved one, wearing his face, speaking with his voice. Bitter betrayal seeped into her heart. The joy of reunion was replaced by a sense of loss, deeper than before. The man she had welcomed with open arms was a stranger. The home they once shared was now a house of secrets, a maze of lies. She found herself at a crossroads. To continue living this lie in the shadow of the past, or to confront the specter of her loved one and demand the truth. It was a struggle, a battle between her love for him and her need for truth. But as the saying goes, the truth will out. And so it did. The man she loved was gone, replaced by a specter of his past. Acceptance is a bitter pill to swallow, especially when it involves losing a loved one. But life, my dear friends, doesn't always give us the luxury of choice. It's a series of twists and turns, taking us on a journey we often don't understand. Our protagonist, a woman of remarkable spirit, found herself in such a predicament. The joy of reunion quickly turned into a nightmare as the love of her life changed beyond recognition. The man who returned to her was not the one she had known and cherished. He was a stranger, an enigma she had to unravel. The journey was tough, filled with confusion, pain, and countless questions. She sought answers, hoping to understand what had happened, why he had changed. But the truth she discovered was far from comforting. The man she loved was gone, replaced by a specter of his former self. It was a harsh reality to accept, but accept she did. For acceptance, as they say, is the first step towards healing. She let go of her futile hopes, her desperate attempts to bring back the man she once knew. She accepted the truth of his transformation and made peace with her loss. In the process, she discovered a strength she never knew she possessed. She found resilience within herself, a firm resolve to face the challenges that lay ahead. She embraced her solitude, her independence, and learned to love herself, to find joy in her own company. The experience had changed her, shaped her into a stronger, more resilient woman. She had lost her love, but in the process she had found herself. She had discovered her worth, her potential, her ability to survive and thrive despite the odds. In the end, the journey was worth it. It was painful, yes, but it was also enlightening. It taught her about life, love, loss, and most importantly, about herself. She had lost him, yet in the process, she found herself. Y'all, we're wrapping up here, but don't you go anywhere just yet. Show some love, hit that like button. Fancy more content like this? Go on, subscribe and let that bell icon ring so you won't miss a beat. Thanks for tuning in, and remember, sharing is caring. Until next time, stay tuned.